Hello everyone, we are Thu Hường, Bảo Trâm, Thành Long, Thúy Linh, Thanh Tâm and Như Ý from Group 6. Through this video, we will focus on some typical economic policies, including reactionary policies, the policy on monopolizing and encouraging alcohol, salt and opium, agriculture policies, and tax policies that French colonization applied to Vietnam. The very first policy is reactionary. In the context of the first economic exploitation, 1897 to 1914, and the second one is 1919 to 1929 in Vietnam, which was introduced and escalated by the French colonialists. In order to compensate for the damage caused by the war of aggression, exploit colonial exploitation for the growth of French imperialism, and create the basis for long-term French rule. They carry out reactionary policies. On the one hand, maintaining the feudal economy, feudal possession, land rent exploitation. On the other hand, they plunder resources, products, exploit cheap labor to serve national industry, thereby exhausting the country's natural resources. Besides, the land, rail, and water traffic system serving their economic exploitation was expanded. Some public works were constructed to meet the needs of the colonialists instead of that of the natives. In the Declaration of Independence of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, President Ho Chi Minh condemned the French colonialists' economic policies. In the field of economics, they have fleeced us to the backbone, impoverished our people, and devastate our land. They have robbed us of our rice fields, our mines, our forests, and our raw materials. They have invented numerous unjustifiable taxes and reduced our people, especially our peasantry, to a state of extreme poverty. They have hampered the prospering of our national bourgeoisie. They have mercilessly exploited our workers. Secondly, it is worth noting that to enslave and exploit our people, the colonial regime applied the policy on monopolizing and encouraging alcohol, salt, and opium. First to mention, salt is one of the basic necessities, especially an indispensable product like rice in the Vietnamese dishes. Besides, our country does not have a salt mine. Therefore, all salt consumed in our country is produced through seawater filtration method by letting the water evaporate away, the salt setting down below and then gathering into basket for sale. These factors have made salt scarce in the market. Thus, tax policy makers of France immediately determined to monopolize the salt. Next, alcohol has been considered quite vital in our cultural life. In fact, alcohol is often appeared in our festival, weddings, funerals, sacrifice, and reunions between close friends or at parties to see if people are in welcoming meals. Any village had one or two families living by making wine. Wine became a very popular product. Thus, the French colonialists decided to monopolize the market by establishing the Fontaine Wine Company at heavily inflated prices. By the beginning of the 1900s, the French authorities banned the production of our own rice wine and salt. At that time, there were 1,500 alcohol and opium retailers and only 10 schools in every 1,000 villages. From 1900s to 1910, the colonial government earned 45 million piastres profit from alcohol. That regime damaged Vietnamese extraction but brought significant benefits to the colonialists. It took many measures to encourage and force people to use opium. Between 1900 and 1907, the revenue from opium was approximately 6.8 million piastres per year, and in 1911, it was 9 million piastres. By the 1930s, Vietnam produced more than 80 tons of opium annually for sale domestically and abroad that led to many addicted people as well as negatively influenced social control. In addition, by 1935, France's collective sales of rice wine, salt, and opium were earning more than 600 million francs per annum. That means the equivalent of US is $5 billion nowadays. Opium addiction became a serious issue in Vietnam society at that time, especially among the wealthy Vietnamese elite. Not only the rich, but also countless miners, plantation workers, and urban laborers got into the vicious circles of opium addiction. Opium is not only a tool for the colonists to exploit the colony, but also a way to implement a policy of poisoning the people and devastating colonial countries so that they can easily maintain their rules. Especially in the Declaration of Independence in 1945, Ho Chi Minh was deeply aware of the immediate and long-term dangers of opium. Ho Chi Minh presidents point out that colonists used opium and alcohol to weaken our race. Until now, the problems Ho Chi Minh presidents showed about the dangers of opium are still valid. Thirdly, talking about agriculture policy. Under the French colonial rule, feudal landlords continued to be maintained. There was also the possession of large areas of land by the French colonialists and the Catholic Church. Northern Vietnam often falls into starvation when crops fail or meet natural disaster of flood. During the year of Ất Dậu, 2 million people died. The starvation rate was highest among farmers without arable land. Therefore, the Vietnamese economy during the colonial period was in fact an outdated, crippled one and left a long-term legacy for the socio-economic development of Vietnam later. Finally, when we mention about tax, we should not forget about how cruel French colonists did to us by charging their tax on nearly every daily necessities of Vietnamese people, like the tax on salt, tax on wine. We can easily remember it from the colonization literature's famous work from many famous writers such as Nam Cao Ngô Tất Tố. One of the most notorious taxes during this period is the tax pulled on all adult males since they reach 18 years old, and tax on agricultural landfill. For instance, if a person was not able to pay the tax, they will be beaten, put into prison, and the local government will take everything he had to take back the money, even his wife and daughter. Therefore, these taxes had put Vietnamese people's lives in the colonization period to become a living nightmare. In the final analysis, all of these four policies, reactionary policies, the policy on monopolizing and encouraging alcohol, salt, and opium, agriculture policy, and tax policy, have made our country's economy and people's lives to suffer in misery for a long time. It also created a major difficulty in our way to recover as an independent country. And that brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for your interest and attention.